26. First up on the Treffs Forum stage is Coffee with the C-Suite, Creators, Technologists, and Music's AI Frontier, featuring Paul Sinclair, Daniel Rowland, Danny Newcomb, and Sam Hendel, with moderator Dick Wingate.
Any seat you like. Take any seat you like.
Okay. Rock and roll.
Good morning, everybody. It's Sunday of VersoFest weekend, and we're still rocking. With the help of some coffee. Coffee with the C-Suite. That's what we're up to this morning. And I'm really excited to have these esteemed panelists here. I'm going to actually ask them to each introduce themselves briefly and also briefly explain what their company does. And of course, then we'll really, get into it. So we'll start with Daniel Rowland.
Yeah, sure. What's going on, everybody? So, my name is Daniel Rowland. I am the Vice President of Strategy and Partnerships at LANDR Audio, which we'll probably talk more about later, but was sort of the first company to scale any products in the music AI space about 13 years ago, and I came on board about 11 years ago. So I've been on stages like this talking about AI for music AI for over a decade, and don't throw any tomatoes at me or anything for that, but people used to. But I come from the creative side of the industry as a music producer, Academy Award-winning stuff with Pixar, like 17 billion streams, and John Wick, a bunch of different stuff, right? So I come like film and artist, and I'm a college professor as well at MTSU in Nashville teaching music production.
Good morning. I'm Danny Newcomb, CEO and founder of Incantio. Incantio is a two-sided marketplace. We allow independent artists to one-stop their music, tiers of licensing, pre-license their music for sync. On the other side, we allow music supervisors, film editors come in and pre-license those tracks from independent artists. So we're very interested in amplifying independent artist music. We're very supportive of human music and tools, which we will get into shortly. I've been playing music all my life, solo artist, also grew up in Seattle, and toured for years. So happy to be here.
Good morning, I'm Paul Sinclair. First, thanks for having me here. This library is incredible. We just built a new library in the town that I live in, Maplewood, New Jersey. Just opened a few months ago, and I'm a little bit jealous. So, I work for a company called Suno. Suno, if you haven't used it, we're actually running some workshops today, so hopefully you get to try it out. Suno is a place where people come to make music. And I say people, everyone from my kids and my mom, and they might make songs or by like playing the piano, uploading music, and then building on the music, using AI tools, all the way through to some of the world's biggest artists, songwriters, and producers. I spent the last 25 years in the Warner Music Group system. That's where I met Dick. I ran digital at Atlantic Records for 15 or so years, and then I was the general manager for 7 or so years. And I started at Suno about a year ago.
And I'm Sam Hendel, founder of Chord Music Partners. We're one of the largest IP holders of music in the world. It's a joint venture with Universal Music, and we have rights from artists like Stevie Nicks, John Legend, The Weeknd, David Guetta, et cetera. I'm very passionate about AI. About 15 years ago, kind of in my prior life, I started a company called Data Miner, which is the leading company for AI for real-time breaking news in the world.
So great to have everybody here. We're here today at a very strange and pivotal moment in the music industry, and it's just on the stage, as you've heard, we have entrepreneurs who are building the models, empowering creators, structuring rights, and financing catalogs. So it should be a lively conversation because their perspectives don't always align. And that's what makes for a great conversation. So
we plan to argue.
But I think we pretty much agree on everything, almost.
Can we talk about AI slop, please?
We were just talking upstairs for a minute, just some of the context of AI music creation. There's a AI created artist named Zania Monet who's had very significant chart success, and her creator was just signed to $1 million record deal. Pretty significant. There's a band called Velvet Sundown that's put out multiple albums, so this is happening more and more often. I'm going to start by asking Paul, as Paul mentioned, he spent 25 years at Atlantic and Warner Music, and now that you're on the tech side of the business and anyone can make a song with their phone, what does that shift feel like for you? I went through this myself 25 years ago after spending 20 plus years at major labels when I helped launch the first significant digital music distribution company, Liquid Audio. So I know what he's going through, but I want to hear what Paul's perspective is.
Okay, so I am long-winded, so cut me off as I go.
Okay.
So I think I actually try to wake up every day, and I have a couple of mantras. One is this stuff's really complicated, so we should always constantly acknowledge that the future is complicated. Every version was more complicated, but this is game-changing in every way, right? It is changing humanity and has not way beyond what the music impact. It's number one. Number two, I try to take my direction from creatives, and so I've been out there talking to songwriters and producers and artists of all levels, ranging from hobbyists that are just making music for fun, all the way through to Grammy Award-winning people. And when they're really excited, I spend all my time asking them when they're excited, and more times than not, people are really excited about how these tools are helping them. Later I can talk about some of my recent travels. And then when people are pissed off, I listen to them there as well. And there's lots of people that are upset, angry, curious, maybe curious and angry. What I tend to find is that people that are the most angry have actually never tried any of these tools. That's not a rule, but it's largely true. And so the first thing I do, which is why we're doing workshops here, is I say, can I just show you? I'm not trying to sell you on Suno. I'm here to just help educate us all and move us all forward. And I tend to when they play around with the tools, they're like, I'm still not sure if this is for me, but holy mackerel, I'll watch my tongue. Holy mackerel, these things are crazy. This is really interesting. I'm gonna keep playing at home. So, I think the shift, I fundamentally believe that we should empower people to experience the joy of making music. I watch people relearn their instruments because Suno's more fun when you create in lots of different ways. Prompting is cool. Prompting is how lots of people do it, but lots and lots of people upload their audio and they'll work on the lyrics, work on the music they're making.
Well, can you maybe think of an example of something that someone did on the platform that genuinely surprised you?
All right, so I try not to talk about certain kinds of things, but because I think it feels kind of gross. But here's my surprise: I was in a room probably last summer. I met this guy. His name is Carl. Carl has been a songwriter since I think the 80s, maybe the 70s. He's probably about 65, 70 years old. He's been a songwriter effectively his whole life. He got throat cancer. He lost his tongue in 24. And he said, I use Suno every day because now I trained a persona using AI tools, something off of Suno, recreating my own voice based on my catalog. And now I use Suno to make music, and I use that persona, and I bring music to the world again in my voice. And so I thought that was incredible. And I couldn't believe, that was the first time I heard of a use like this. I hear about those uses every day. That's one example. And then being the first time I was ever in a studio with some of the biggest, a massive band and an incredible producer. The producer was Omos Keith, who's a Grammy Award-winning producer, but a massive band who was using the tools. And they came in sort of I don't know about these tools, I'm not really sure. And by the time we hit day 2, they were all we would love to use this process of imagination tools to help work on our next album.
Great, thank you. Daniel Rowland.
Yeah, well, what's up? Well, I was just going to piggyback on Paul just real quick.
I've known Daniel a long time, too. LANDR obviously started as a AI mastering tool and has grown into a full creative platform for millions of users. For people in this room who make music or always maybe wanted to, what has changed over the last couple of years that makes it that much more accessible, and how can they benefit from that?
Yeah, I think, one of the issues that we look to solve, right, and kind of our sweet spot is the fragmentation of creator tools, right? Everyone knows there's a million great distributors, there's a million great plugin companies, sample companies, education platforms, all that stuff, right? But the problem is they are all separate, for the most part, separate offerings, separate subscriptions, right? And there's no interconnected workflow between any of that stuff, by and large, right? So if you're a new creator coming into the industry, not even forgetting the financial side of it, right? It's a very daunting sort of landscape. You need a DAW, you need all these things. So we started as an automated mastering company. It's probably what we're most well known for. But now we cover every single vertical in the creator journey from, we have as many samples as Splice, basically. We have 100 plugins. We just bought a DAW, but we also offer other DAWs to our users. Distribution, mastering, 200 educational courses, literally every bucket you could pretty much think of, and all under one subscription for like $10 or $15 a month or whatever it is, depending upon the tier. And we're constantly adding a lot to that, and lots of AI tools. So part of what I do is M&A for the company, but I also go out and I license really cool AI stuff because we have a data set that we source from our users, and it allows us to partner with a lot of people. So yeah, it's been interesting. We're unique because we're an AI native company. I mean, Suno obviously as well, but our users come to us expecting more AI tools, right? We're not trying to force them on them. They trust us to kind of give them things that we think that will actually be valuable to them. And I'll say, just to real quickly wrap up on that, what Paul was saying I think is interesting. When I came onto LANDR, a lot of people were, I said it was like 11 years ago, very against it, right? And I think it was important to have somebody from the music industry come on board and sort of help shepherd that technology in a way forward in a way that benefited creatives and could tell the story from a creative's perspective. And I found that what people most wanted to know is who was behind the technology, which I didn't expect. When I talked to artists, they're like, oh, you're cool. The tech is cool, right? They just wanted to feel like they weren't being exploited and that the kind of the intention behind it was authentic.
And I'll ask you the same question I asked Paul. Is there an example of something that happened in the last couple of years that genuinely surprised you that came out of the platform?
Sure. I mean, I think anybody who develops tech, it's fascinating to see ways people use it you did not intend, right? And I mean, our tool is generally meant for mastering, stereo final mix, right? But we found that a lot of sound designers use it. They were uploading like 400, 500 gunshot sound effects to it and leveling them all out and basically mastering them for post-production for film and television. So it's become this big thing with sound designers to use it, and they were demanding, because we were like, why are you asking to upload 500 things at once? But that's what they're doing, little snippets of audio. So I thought that was interesting. And I used it actually with the Pixar film that I did, that I won the Academy Award. At Skywalker, we used it on a lot of the sound effects for that.
That's great. Danny, you've spent decades as a working musician and songwriter, and you've toured, and now you've built Incantio to help specifically independent artists get their music placed in film, television, advertising, gaming, and that's so important today with the hundreds of millions of songs that are being uploaded monthly to be able to get a sync, as it's known, in one of those environments is so critical. So how did you use AI to create this platform? How are you solving the problem for independent artists?
Well, I wouldn't say we're the only solution or we've solved it completely. We use AI mainly through our partners at Ames API, their search engine for music recommendation. Great guys based out of the Czech Republic. I think they work with most of the major labels and Warner Chappell and everybody else. So we use AI primarily as a recommendation tool. We don't train any of the music that's uploaded to our platform. We are a pass-through service, very much based on, I think the thing that you can do for independent artists is to give them a place where they can license, sell their wares, and own their rights. The most subversive thing we can do is create an economic marketplace where they can do this, where they can price their music and where other people can license it. Now, two-sided marketplaces are a big lift, but it's been actually really, really exciting coming out of beta and getting real connections with the independent film community and with music supervisors. I see the future of this as still building bridges, even if there are enough AI tools and search engines for music supervisors to use, and it may, at scale, take some of their work, but ultimately I think the work will grow and there'll be more access for independent artists to plug in with other automated systems. So really excited about supporting human artists in that way and making those connections. I did have I'm gonna go on for 1 second.
No,
I had a
take-
call yesterday with a writer named David Malloy out of Nashville. He has 41 Nashville hits, worked with Dolly Parton and Reba McEntire, and he was like, wow, I looked at your platform, I love this, you know, it's non-exclusive, this is great. And we talked a lot about, you know, the business aspects of Incantio. And he was like, you know, for this last record that I want to release through Incantio, I found these great backup singers, you know. I think it was actually through Suno. And he's like, yeah, they have the best backup singers there. And I started laughing. I mean, I see the place for these tools, especially with somebody who knows their craft, obviously, that well, is exciting. For people who are professional writers, I did want to say, I read these 2 paragraphs in the New York Times this morning, how it affects younger creators before they have those skill sets or writing experience is different. Ezra says, AI sycophancy, the tendency of these systems to obsequiously flatter their users, made headlines over the last year, but sycophancy is just the bright packaging on the real product. What makes AI truly persuasive isn't that it praises our ideas or insights, it's that it restates and extends them in a more compelling form that we initially offered, and does so while reflecting a polished image of ourselves back at us. So what it's saying is that if you are somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience and you come in and you accelerate to a finished product, you don't do all the hard work. You aren't the filter, right? There's something else that's a filter. So for new artists, I have concerns.
Can I just jump in there? So I have 2 daughters. Also, by the way, I just told Sam, I spoke to a songwriter in Nashville on Friday who has 43 number ones, and Sam named 2 other not Dave Malloy songwriters, and I said no. And so apparently everyone in Nashville has 40 some odd Grammys. It's amazing.
What are the odds?
Right. So I have, I'm moving to Nashville. So I have 2 daughters, 16 and 18. 18-year-old aspires to be a singer-songwriter, also wants to work in the music industry, doesn't use AI at all. And then when I try to convince her, like, oh, you could work on some of your records, she's like, I want to learn all the skills, right? She knows enough to know that she needs to learn the grind, and that's not coming from me. I'm over here trying to convince her to at least try the tools, because she produced her last body of work and wasn't happy with it because a high school friend of hers produced it. So that's one daughter. The other daughter doesn't really aspire to make music. She plays the piano, has played her whole life, and just aspires to like have fun with music. She uses Suno all the time. She'll like write some lyrics, she's a poet, she'll write a bunch of lyrics, she'll upload piano that she's working on, not like a song, just like a bunch of melody that she's working on, and then she'll use Suno to just like work her way through to like what would be a good version of this. They have very different goals. One is smart enough to know that she needs to grind, the other one's like, yeah, I'm doing this for fun.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out, sometimes we get hung up on thinking of generative AI as like you prompt and you get something back and there's not much agency, there's not much contribution from the user. That, I mean, it's like a hammer, right? As you build a house, you can murder somebody with it. Like AI can be used for all sorts of different things, but like background vocals, it's funny you brought that up. The K-pop sessions I've been in recently, that they use it for background vocals, Suno specifically, a lot. nothing else. That's pretty much it. Gang vocals, background vocals, because those time consuming to record potentially, right? And yeah, so it's interesting. And we'll talk about this more later, but I mean, AI done right has the capacity to make music even more musical, which I kind of say a lot when we're talking about sample-based music. But anyway, we'll get into that.
Sam, I want to ask you, as you mentioned in your intro, Chord Music Partners, you have 65,000 songs. It's growing. Major artists. When you look at what's happening in music and in AI creation, what do you see that maybe the people in this room don't see? You know, what is the path at this point from the perspective of the investor?
You know, well, one, I think that if you go back 50 years ago when the synthesizer was created, a lot of people in the music industry poo-pooed it and said, oh, this is ruining music. And now it's obviously widely accepted, it's used, it's a great tool. I think AI is in a similar vein. It is a great tool. We have some of our major artists that talk publicly about using AI in their creative process. You know, right now, and you mentioned a couple of the artists, was it Velvet Sundown and how do we,
Zanaya
Monet. You know, they don't really have very big followings, a lot of these the AI artists. So I think Zanaya Monet has 700,000 Spotify monthly listeners. The Velvet Sundown is about 100,000. Comparatively, you know, Taylor Swift is like 110 million. So it's very small right now. That being said, when we compare it, you know, the ability to create content has dramatically changed. It's gotten cheaper, it's gotten easier, and people are going on Suno and some of the other platforms and they're making music and they're uploading it to the services. But also we have every day, there are 100,000 to 125,000 songs are uploaded on Spotify. Most of those are made by people in their bedrooms who are just having fun and making music. That's a great thing. You know, it is a great tool. That is a good thing that people are creating music. I think from an industry perspective, what we're focused on is I want to take my tracks and I want to help storytell around them. I want to have, you know, people take Zed's catalog, play around with it. Like the fans, they're already doing it today. They're putting their music, you know, they're taking our music, taking these artists' music, they're putting it on TikTok, they're putting it on YouTube. It's called UGC, user-generated content. Sometimes they're messing around with it. I think that's a great thing. I think that, you know, there's still a challenge. How do we track that? How do we remunerate rights holders in a fair way? And how do we make sure that we're getting paid for our work in a training fashion, in a prompting fashion, and that we're not dumping the world with a ton of AI slop, but we're actually using AI as a tool to storytell, to connect people more deeply to the music they love, and allow new artists, younger artists, to make more music, make it more efficiently, and do great things, and connect to audiences.
Can I make Sam define AI slop for me?
I knew that was
Wait, do you want to explain what AI slop is?
AI slop is the term that my partner Universal Music is using, I think very deftly, to say that, you know, music, when I listen to music, when I go to a concert, when I want to connect to something, I think people do want to listen to a human being. There is something, that connection between when you're 15 years old and you listen to Nirvana for the first time, or the Beatles for the first time, or you listen to a new band like Geese, you find your tribe. Music's how you find your tribe, and you connect on a human level to the art and what someone is saying. AI slop, I would define as music without a soul. Music that doesn't have that care that's put into it and the emotional connection, and you can do that instantly. You can make millions of songs. I think Suno, what you guys are at, 8 million songs a day get made, something like that? Maybe 10?
Something like that.
Something like that.
Give or take.
And that's great. Like, and there are real great things, but dumping that onto the streaming services, nobody wants, and Suno doesn't want it either. Like, maybe you do.
No, I do not.
You don't. I don't think you do.
No, but can I ask you? I jokingly asked that. We were joking about this before, because we lack the vernacular to describe all these problems that are now getting created by all of the future, right? Like, Suno's a very small part of a very big future. I made a song with my 18-year-old, I made a song on the college road trip racket. And so I made a song about the process. She gave a little bit of input, but I spent like, I don't know, 4 days working on this song. No instruments, it was all in Suno, it was all prompting, right? But I used our studio product, I generated some other instruments for it, whatever. The whole thing was prompts and AI. At the end of the day, I shared that song with her. She loves that song. I shared it with a bunch of other people. But it's all AI.
And that's great, though. I think that's great.
That's where we lack this vernacular, right? Yeah. Because like I think in like the lazy way of describing AI slop, right? Like I don't know if it's like, well, if you put that on Spotify, it's slop. I'm not really sure where it goes from a personal moment with someone to this is slop. Maybe it's when you use it as spam on the internet.
Yeah, I think it's the totality of it that I think is what I think everyone would agree, that we don't want to be inundated. Like it's like going to the Cheesecake Factory and you have 20,000 things in the menu. Like it's pretty hard. Like I think everyone does want the cream to rise to the top, and it usually does.
I would like to interject one thing. I think it's really important to remember that music was the first human language. Like sound was the first human language. That's the first thing we hear when we're in utero, everything else. And it might not even be, I mean, obviously there might be some lyrical content coming into the womb, but it's more sounds. And it's important to remember that that all has emotional content. And this is why comics are so funny, is the timing, the delivery, the sound of even things that don't convey a logical thought. But there's a sound of joy, there's a sound of laughter. These things connect us. And I think AI slaps a little bit, I don't know what it means. I mean, maybe it sounds like you're feeding the hogs. Or
it's great branding by the music companies.
But it sounds like a wall of impenetrable nothing. Like you're getting hit with all of this content that doesn't have a soul. And I think that that's scary. Yeah.
So I don't disagree. I just I can't figure out where the blurred lines are.
Yeah, and this soul you're speaking of, like how do we detect that in music? Because I guarantee you, AI, and I'm not even, this isn't even a proponent one way or the other, and I had gotten a bit of a tiff last night on LinkedIn about this with somebody. I could, in the right hands, with somebody who knows what they're doing, knows what they're prompting, and knows what to listen for in music, I could fool anybody with music, and they would. And you hear stories about this all the time from my producer friends, like, man, I've been jamming on this song for the past 3 months. It's my favorite song, and I found out it was AI generated. I had absolutely no idea. These are people who know how the sausage is made, right? So I think there's, the soul thing is okay, but the reality is, these things, these models were trained on the greats, the greatest music that's ever been made. So to think that it can't create something that moves you is complete fallacy.
Yeah, well, I always say, Gorillaz, Daft Punk. Gorillaz and Daft Punk, kind of, you don't really know who, there wasn't a human being, there was a human being behind that, but for a long time, people didn't know who that human being was. But the storytelling, that's still connected to people. Sure. And I think we can't lose track of that, but at the same time, these tools are, oops.
There you go.
Shouldn't happen. These tools are amazing. And they're being used like the synthesizer, and there are going to be real artists, and frankly, probably a lot of songs that we might have in our catalog. Our catalog, we tend to have things over 5 years old, but we might buy songs at some point that are likely partly made with Suno. I think that's okay. I think there's still a question on how we compensate the artist whose music gets trained on to create that. But that being said, I think this is part of the creative process. It will be part of the creative process going forward, and we have to find a solution that works for both the kind of artist and songwriter community and the tech companies, because we all want the tech companies to succeed.
I want to pick up on that. What's at stake in terms of compensation to artists and how their music is used or not used in training AI, and without getting lost in the legalese, I'll ask Paul to start. Like, what is that? What is the? Because Suno's in the news. If you don't know, they are, and there's what is the core of the disagreement with the record labels and music publishers?
So I definitely will take, I'm going to walk very carefully here because we have two major lawsuits with Universal Music Group and Sony, and so I can't talk all that much about some of what you're asking about, but let me give it a shot. So I think the at core is there's a disagreement amongst, let's call them lawyers, about whether or not training AI using the world's music is fair use or not, right? When we all learn music, we learn music by listening and hearing and playing and whatever. And so a lot of the tech companies are taking the stance that fair use allows us to train as people the engines that then we all use in the future. And then obviously lots of rights holders and lots of people believe that the fair use doesn't apply to computers and computer training. And so that's the core. I will not take a position on that because I would get killed. I'll leave it at that for the moment. Yeah.
Yes, the issue of fair use is at the core.
Yeah, I think we kind of probably agree on a lot of this, so I'll maybe speak. But you know, the issue with fair use is that it's not fair use if the thing that you create is taking away economics from what you from what was trained on. So if the AI music starts taking economics from all the other music, then it's not fair use anymore. And I think that gets solved with training. So I think generally, I think pretty much everyone agrees that the model at the end of state is going to be there's a small amount of revenue that goes for what gets trained on. Frankly, that is a bit commoditized. There is a larger amount that goes to the rights holders for what gets prompted, because the main behavior is going to be, make me a song that sounds like The Weeknd, make me a song that sounds like Fleetwood Mac. That's what we're doing with visual AI, when we'll say, all right, make me a picture of New York City in the style of Jackson Pollock and the style of Van Gogh. So that piece, those two pieces, training and prompting, should go to the rights holder. And the AI companies, they need to have great business models. We want them to succeed. And there's going to be a piece that goes to the AI tools for their innovation to create products that people know and love. And then we can go into and I think we probably should go to the walled garden question, which is a really fun one, Dick, if you don't mind.
Where it gets more interesting or complex is that as a song is being created, there may be many different artists or writers whose influence has been brought into the mix. It's like baking a cake. Well, how do you compensate? Who gets compensated how much? It's like you can't unbake the cake. So the general term for that within the industry is attribution. You know, how do you break it down? Who gets paid what? And that's still very much in the air. Attribution.
I think largely technologically, right? So
yes.
The idea of like following the derivative of a derivative of a derivative, a song that like I make a song and I make a song based on Bruno Mars and then Sam makes a version and it ends up on YouTube and. And so I think most of us, maybe everyone on this panel would agree that like the ability to pay creators tied to all the amazing things that get made in the future. We should all be compensating artists. That's why we're out here trying to do partnerships. We've done some. We have a lot more to go, hence lawsuits. But I think we also like, it's day zero of this future, and there are so many technology challenges that we're like, yeah, that would be fantastic. We've all met with 40 little startups that all have versions of, we can solve that problem. But it just hasn't been solved yet, and it's going to take time, and our responsibility is to like make sure that all of the creatives of the world don't get hurt in the transition, because in all the other transitions, we've all watched songwriters and artists and the rest of the creative community miss out on those transitions because we didn't act as an industry fast enough. And like, when iTunes fell off a cliff, Spotify didn't grow fast enough. And so people get hurt in transition.
Yeah, boy, this is an interesting topic because a company like Suno, I'm going to step in something here. Had Suno gone about licensing all the music that they trained on, it would have been basically impossible for them to exist as a company, right? So our industry is not really set up to allow for that, right? Because it's new tech, there's not even ground rules for that, right? So, you know, they kind of treated it like a research project and ingested everything and blah, blah, blah. You know, so it's tricky, right? Because you're able to make money off of that, and now kind of coming back and trying to license and kind of do it right. So I'm of two minds here. It's like, oh, they trained on everybody's music, but then it's like, well, it wouldn't exist if they hadn't have found some way to do that, and okay, then they're retroactively paying people whatever it is, right? So it's kind of tricky. The way that we went about this is about 2 years ago, we launched something we call our Fair Trade Initiative, and we're a distributor of music, so we distribute millions of songs, and we allowed our users to opt in at the point of distribution if they want their data to be used to train AI models. And of course, they trust us to train AI models that we're exclusively going to build products that we put in our subscription for them to use. We're not giving it to anybody else to use for stuff that's not under the LANDR umbrella, and they get 20% of all revenue from anything that, you know, any subscription, any, you know, perpetual license of anything that's sold that uses their data, right? And that's actually worked really well for us. We're one of the data sets behind two data sets behind the 11 Labs music model, right? And we're able to do that, and our users get paid for that, and we incorporate the 11 Labs model in our products. So there's various ways to approach this problem to have creators participate or not if they choose not to.
Yeah, so that is at the core of the decision that ultimately artists may be making, at least going forward, as to whether or not to opt in to have their music trained on the various AI platforms.
Yeah.
And do they have to opt in, or do they have to opt out?
It's likely to be opt-in. We're figuring, like, in real time, we're starting to go out to our artists. Now, the tricky thing is music has 2 copyrights. There's the copyright of the sound recording, and then there's the copyright of the song itself. And most of the songs, they're written by like 5 to 7 people. And you need to go and get both sides cleared, which is a problem in the industry. I mean, it is archaic and very hard to get a sync cleared, get into a commercial, get this cleared. But we're going with an opt-in model right now. At some point, we'll see how that goes. They might switch it over to an opt-out.
I think opt-in models are the best. Everybody has to move forward, and I think that a lot of people are going to, depending on your economic model, they might not choose you. You know, I think that's a capitalist system, and that's what craftspeople have to have agency to be able to do, and that drives the market. So I'm for that. There's a couple of things I've been thinking about up here. One was the reference to Daft Punk. I was listening to Chic, the band from the 70s, and I was like, that rhythm section is the bomb. I'm like, it sounds like
Rogers
Daft
from
Punk.
Westport, lives in Westport.
Right. So you know, that's human synthesis of like knowing something good, knowing something that moves people and goes back. I think there's an interesting tipping point here with AI and the stuff, not to get into stuff or slop, but the music that it's been trained on is all music that came from these golden eras of music that we know at, you know, 60s, 70s, 80s, and it risks artistic pollution if you have everybody trying to recreate that constantly. So that's another concern I have about songwriting using tools.
Yeah, well, I totally agree with you, by the way. I think there's going to be people that use AI just to regurgitate what has happened previously, just subtly different. But to me, as a creative, you know, I'm lucky. I came up under the tutelage of like Adrian Belew from King Crimson and Trent Reznor and people like that who break technology to invent new sounds, to go in new directions. And I think when AI hallucinates, that's my favorite thing, right? Like I want that. I don't want it, the normal shit that it can do, because musicians can do that, right? I think we haven't seen it so much yet, but you're going to see the use of these tools. Like people broke our tool and used it for gunshot sound effects, right? People are going to take it in different directions, and you're going to see literally new genres of music that would have never existed had the tech not been there.
Well, let me just, I'm in 2 different kinds of rooms almost every single day of the week. One room is largely industry-type folks across all the spectrum, managers, everybody. And every conversation is at best measured and curious, and that's like the top end of the conversation. As I mentioned before, most of those folks have like never actually tried any of this stuff. And then in most of the creative conversations that I have, and I'm not calling people that use Suno, they're reaching out to us, or people are just sticking me in a room and say, hey, meet with 5 songwriters. Some of them are not like super Suno happy right now. And in every conversation I have with creators, we have like a creative conversation about the future and about new music and about genres and about blending and bending and all these things. And so it's just like, we've seen that before as well. Although interestingly, like I remember in the Spotify transition, it was the opposite. Artists just didn't get it, and they were like, I don't really understand what this thing is, and I don't understand free, and like they just didn't get it. They didn't have it on their phones. I went person by person by person installing Spotify or Apple or whatever, which came later. But I do think like sometimes we lose sight of the artists are going to create, and the best creators are going to rise. Like my younger daughter, just making music for fun because that's her aspiration, is not going to be Ed Sheeran any day ever. She's not going to be Chic. And hopefully my other daughter, who's learning all the hard toil, is going to find and create a sound. And then new technology, whether it's synth, push buttons on laptop, whatever it is going, she will find a way to make new art and music. I fundamentally believe that. I've asked a lot of label heads this question, like, are you worried? And they're like, no, the world's best storytellers are always going to be better. I'm always going to be a really, really crappy songwriter, and all the people with 43 hits are going to be far better.
Yeah, and I think the casual use is going to sort of move to a mean of homogeneity in some way, shape, or form, right? Like, real art is when you have a unique, distinct voice for a time and place that comes out with music that people care about and connects. And I think some people, frankly, are going to be better at using the AI tools to do that than others. And that's a good thing. It is, I think we are going to figure this out as an industry. It might take, a little arm wringing, but I think we'll get there.
Yeah, and just real quickly on the creativity side of this, right? Now, leave rights aside for a second. Do we consider DJs to be creative, as an example, right? Generally, yes, right? Okay, well, what are DJs doing? They're curating music, basically, and then reading a room and presenting that. And of course, there's performative aspects too as well, but they're basically curators. And we've been moving for a long time to this place where curation is creation, right? If you have taste, now whether I learn to play guitar and I get my taste out that way, or I'm prompting or whatever, and I can make decisions about things I like and I don't like and iterate until I get to an end result, which is kind of what creation is. I think that this becomes a tool just like any other to impart something that you have to say on it. Again, back to the hammer analogy, people are going to use it to generate 1,000 songs in a day and that they don't care about as well, right? Because you can't really prevent that. But I think as a creative tool, again, we're going to see perspectives that we have never heard before in the music space from people who would never have participated otherwise.
Yeah, and I think this goes back into the big argument right now is walled garden versus what's the expression you guys use?
I made it up on a run. Open studios.
Open studios. Open studios versus walled garden. The technology isn't there, as Paul mentioned, to track and attribute all the AI slop, but all the millions of songs that can come on the system. And that's a tech challenge that should be solved. So I think it's a matter of when, not if. But when we do that, I think everyone's comfortable for music to go out into the wild. As long as we can track it for the artist and songwriter, make sure they get fairly paid, I think everyone's good with that. It's a big debate right now. I'm actually a big believer that we want to create a walled garden where people can make great things using, one of the artists we have is Major Lazer, which is Diplo's big kind of DJ supergroup project. They want to engage. Like, I think it's amazing for people to go in, take their music, mess around with it, create new things. In a walled garden, I actually want to take things out of that walled garden and release them as tracks. That's super interesting. That's good storytelling to us. That's what we're focused on.
To explain what the walled garden is, and it's an industry term, and it means that you can use the AI to create whatever you want within the environment of the service, but you're not allowed to export it or use it on social media or post it to the digital service providers. That's the walled garden, and Paul is an advocate for the opposite of that, which is his term, open studio.
Which is a good term, Paul.
Yeah, so I made it up on a run, thank you. The implication of walled garden, because the folks that use that are dear friends of mine, is that, so walled garden inherently means that I could play with Major Lazer's music, right, remix, whatever, it has to live there. So if you pretended that Suno was some other platform, you would have to stay on Suno forever, which means that my daughter, who's an aspiring songwriter that doesn't currently use Suno, could not actually use Suno because she's not trying to remix Major Laser's records. She's trying to make her own music. So my issue with it is not like my term is cuter than theirs. It's that one of our missions is to like empower everybody on the planet that wants to participate in music creation to do that. And I think we, even I, have a tendency to want to talk about Trent Reznor or like the world's most important artists. That's where I come from. I spent my whole life listening to the world's most important music. And that's great, that's amazing. But like, I also want to empower everybody to experience the creation and joy of music. And like when kids get Suno in their hands, all of a sudden they just start getting creative. And instead of doom scrolling on some other platforms, adding creativity into people's lives is wonderful. I think like I have a couple of really crappy examples, but like doing what Wordle did for the New York Times and bringing it to the whole wide world like resonates with me. Doing what Duolingo did, by the way, I made these all up this week. Doing what Duolingo did for language learning and bringing that to music. Music lacks this like ability for everybody to lean in a casual way. If you want to lean in a really heavy way, we've had it for hundreds of years.
I would like to say I differ a little bit. I mean, part of me, music has brought so much joy to my life. Like, it's just, it's been my journey. But I kind of feel like you have to get to a point where, what are you producing by doing that? It's easier. I mean, when I was a kid, I would just play the piano. I didn't even know how to play piano. I would sing, make up songs, and do everything, and that was my journey. But now, because of distribution, because of technology, you're having people do that with tools, ending up with finished products that sound like The Weeknd and releasing it. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I mean, you know, we created this public space, you know, the open studio, but maybe this is AI, maybe that's AI slot.
Well, the Weeknd just needs to get paid, then we're cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, but so can we envision, like, the thing we're talking about is like outcomes-based music creation, right? I want to make songs, right? That's like what Suno is today. I want to make a song. I might want to make a song about this panel. Maybe I'll do that later. Or I might want to make a song because I'm working on a record or something. The other part, the Wordle, Roblox, Duolingo, like, is process-based, right? Yeah. I just want to participate in music more. Like, I think it is such a wild lack of imagination that we, the industry, have, which is me, right? I'm responsible for the last 30 years of it, at least at Atlantic. A lack of imagination where you either listen, you go to concerts, or you go through the I want to learn an instrument. Lots of people don't want to do those, right? Or that I want to learn an instrument part. So I think that we have not yet gotten to the right products, and I'll include Suno in this, where just playing with music is an experience that maybe backs out a little bit of your concern that like everybody on the earth is trying to make a Weeknd song.
Well, and we've already, it's interesting, we've seen, just to go back on something you said a minute ago, we've already sort of seen the repercussions of access to some of these tools. Look at a company like FL Studio, or ImageLine, they make a DAW called FL Studio. They've seen double-digit growth coming from people who started in Gen AI, strangely enough, right? So people who dabbled, okay, felt like they could do this, and then they kind of matriculate onto more professional tools. And I think that's what, I mean, this was we have data from 10 years from my company, which everyone thought we were going to put mastering engineers out of business, right? And that hasn't happened at all 10 years later. If anything, we kind of opened a funnel for new people to get better sounding music back than they put in, right? And if you kind of surprise yourself with your capabilities, that's where engagement comes from, and you continue on, and maybe you buy a microphone, and maybe you learn how to play guitar or whatever. And I think the glass half full side of this is if we allow more people to participate, a percentage of those people are going to learn how to play these songs they generated, right? They're going to want to be able to engage with music and beyond prompting or whatever we end up at as far as the interface.
Yeah, I was thinking about talking about this today, and I'm actually a word person. I was like, is it a toy? Is it for fun? Is it a tool? Is it an instrument? All of them. Right. And, you know, maybe it's all those things. So maybe what we need to talk about is the journey of the exploration is joy. That's great. But maybe we need to talk about ownership a little bit, you know, because there are traditional ways, like you said, about the master license, publishing license, of ascribing ownership. But how do things stand now for ascribing ownership with the AI tools?
They don't yet. And the question is, will it be a black box, which the music industry likes to do sometimes, because it's easier and then you can kind of allocate and pick favorites a little bit, or can we truly get attribution as to what percentage of something was created? And so, you know, if I make a prompt, make me a song that sounds like Fleetwood Mac, well, it's Fleetwood Mac's music should have the lion's share of the creation that happens there. But if you start getting really complicated, how do you start divvying up and having the tool determine which rights holders get what? It's very, very, very challenging. It's actually probably not that hard of a tech problem, but it's more hard of a where the music industry already is today and how we can kind of break down those percentages. That's hard.
One of my concerns that came out of my right when you spend too much time in New York and LA, and then you go to Nashville, you realize that like there's a whole world out there. And in multiple rooms in Nashville, I was asked like, well, what? So when a song gets made on your platform on Suno, it gets made on your platform, and then someone plays with it. And let's pretend it's not released music, it's like just something that somebody's working on, and then they stem it out, and so now you got the drums and the guitar and whatnot, which you can do in our Premiere product. And they said, what about the guitarist? Like, how are they, when their guitar line they were paid for use in this song, right? What happens when it ends up in 72 songs down the road? I said, I have no idea. It's a fantastic question. Like, we've talked about this, but I actually don't know the impact of, so at the moment, the answer is like you actually, like when we have licensed music in a hot minute, you won't be able to put that music in our product that lets you stem out records. But like, that's a short-term fix, right? That's not a long-term fix. And I don't know the answer, and I worry about that, right? I worry that the guitarist that in Nashville lives next door to their songwriter friend that's on their records. I don't know how we figure this out. And it is probably a minor technology problem and a much bigger business problem. But like, we do need to make sure that the if you've got a gospel choir and now the gospel choir is on 7,000 other songs, somehow the money can flow and travel to the individual's studio musicians or session musicians. And like, I view that as a wonderful world, because right now they're sort of boxed into that one. So they should have the right and the ability to consent, and then they should be able to participate. And I don't know exactly how we're going to get there.
You know, I was thinking,
but ignoring it doesn't get us there.
As you were saying that, I was thinking about Daniel and, you know, your longtime relationship with Adrian Belew. So if somebody prompts, I want Adrian Belew's guitar sound or style, that's part of the cake, you know.
So, but I think that part's easy. Like, when you name an artist, you can like attribute it, right? You're like, I think it's more like when you grab that, almost like the sampling problem, right?
Yes.
Like, we live with it now. Samples happen, and then the industry chases to like say, I think that's a sample or an interpolation of a song that I put out. But this is at scale. This is like for every single artist and creator and musician on the whole wide world forever getting super sampled.
Oh, even going back, I have renowned friends, musicians, I won't mention names, who, you know, were known for their, you know, drum sound, and, you know, said, well, that's clearly a sample of my drum sound. It might be in the intro and you know, but that's been the case already for a long time. That's nothing new, but it's just more and more complicated. I want to ask, I want to get a little more granular here, and I want to ask Daniel, you know, you're a musician and an engineer yourself, and all the pieces of the platform that LANDR now often offers potentially displaces other people who ordinarily might be hired to do that. How do you see that? How much is that impacting the people's work? I mean, people are, you know, engineers, producers, genuinely are scared about losing their jobs. So I just would like to hear your perspective, given what LANDR does.
Yeah, I mean, so there's kind of two sides of this, because if you're talking about sort of assistive AI, workflow AI tools versus generative stuff, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, that we've, audio engineers haven't gone out of business because of us over the years, right? What we see is that, as an example, if you talk to mastering engineers, they'll tell you, like, they always get reference files with LANDR in the title, right? And they've been hired to master the song, but what the creator has done is they've been iterating every mix. People go through dozens, if not 100 versions of mixes of songs before they get to the final one, right? It's a very tedious process. So they'll continually run it through our stuff to see what it would sound like once it was mastered, right? So they can get closer to the target, and ultimately it goes to the mastering engineer and they spruce it up and do their thing. And then we have people that just straight master with us and release it, right? So there's like, people can fit in, get in kind of where they, with what works for them. And on our platform, we have like 100 mastering engineers you can hire, by the way. I don't care if you use our mastering tool or you hire a mastering engineer. I just want to give you all the options that make financial and creative sense for you, and you make the decision, right? And that's the kind of the strategy we've taken. Now on the generative side, we just launched a product, it's still in beta at NAMM, that is a generative AI product, dun, dun, dun. But what it does is you contribute your music to it, right? And you can go pick from a list of real musicians, like let's say you want a saxophone player. You pick got his image, you can go on Instagram and check the guy out, and you select a range, and it will, you tell it if you want a solo or you want some harmony or a melody, and it will compose that for you in the space. And the next step to that, because we have a network on LANDR where you can go hire pros if you want, or be hired. If you want to hire that person to play on your project, you can do that, right? So if you can't afford to pay them the $200, you can use the model, which isn't quite as good as the real thing, obviously, but it's good, it'll get you there, and if you want to hire them, you can. So I think it's also about, just affording people options on what they do. So yeah, as far as like negative impact on our side of things, I haven't seen it so far, and I'll close on this. I mentioned earlier about AI making music sort of more musical, and one of the things that we put out, and there's other companies doing this as well, a lot of music these days is sample-based, right? A lot of people are doing splice kind of Lego brick stuff, right? And some of that's for demos, but some of that's for released music, right? And it's very repetitive. And you talk about not having soul. Even though those loops are created by a human, it doesn't really breathe the way that something played by actual musicians would be. So one of the really cool things AI is being used for on the generative side is you can take that 4-bar loop that you love from LANDR or Splice, and it will be contextually aware with everything that is, the vertical arrangement and the horizontal arrangement, and it will extend itself, right, as if it was played by a real person. So this 4-bar loop becomes 32 or 64 bars, but it breathes in a way as if a player had done it, and it molds to what you're doing. And this is how all DAWs are going to work in the next 5 years, by the way. Everything you record and or drag in will be contextually aware, and it can fit together in a way that normally we would have to jump through hoops to try to accomplish, and or it just isn't possible. So there's a lot of, and I think that makes, again, that type of music more musical, right? Because it starts to sound more like real humans did it, because, yeah, they train the models.
Well, that's human, quote, human created music is a fuzzy term, right? And some of the music service providers, all of them, to some extent, have limitations on how much AI music can be uploaded, especially music that's completely AI created. Some of them, they're like Deezer, which is not well known in this country particularly. It's a French music digital service provider, as music services are called. They literally, they block about 60,000 songs every day from their service. And, Spotify and Apple and the others, they all have very different kind of rules. And that's just part of this transition period.
Bandcamp also.
Bandcamp bans all downloads. Bandcamp is basically a download service. It's not a streaming service. And it's been hugely successful for independent artists, because what they make on a single download is 1,000 times more than they make on a stream on Spotify. But they are banning all AI music. I'm seeing that we're up against the time a little bit, and I want to leave time for questions. So if you would please come over to the microphone over here, and please, let's go.
We have time for just a few questions. So please, if you can, just come in with the question, and these guys will answer it for you.
Thank you very much for coming this morning. I have a daughter who's a singer-songwriter, Rachel Rose NYC, if you find her on Instagram. Just a phenomenal artist.
Love that plug.
Top 25 song on Tiny Desk. Anyway, so I have some concerns about artists and their ability to get paid going forward. I have two business questions. One, is sync dead for the artist as a result of introducing AI? And with regard to catalogs, are non-AI artists, is that viewed now and the cash flows going forward as more valuable when you introduce that into the AI environment?
That's a great question. You want to take that, Sam?
Yeah, I'll take the first one. You want to split it?
Okay, well, yeah, it's two different questions.
No, sync is not dead. In fact, I would say that the amount of media generation that's happening now, that's going to be happening, there's more micro syncs, there's more opportunity for automated micro licensing. There's more visual generated content coming out all the time. So there is definitely syncs and licensing opportunities.
Yeah, I agree there. You know, on the side of the non-AI catalog, there hasn't really been a change in multiple over the past 2 years. I mean, we're probably more interest rate sensitive than anything else. I do think though that there is the amount called the AI slop. It hasn't really taken. I think there is on the margin. Some of the royalty pool is being diluted. I think that's likely that'll change once we kind of find the right economic model around compensating artists for this. And I think there is continued, I'll give an example. Fleetwood Mac. So we have Stevie Nicks' catalog on the publishing side, and then John McVie's recorded royalties. That grew 15% last year. It's 48-year-old catalog. We think there is continued growing value of high-quality IP that continues to connect to fans. So I don't think AI is going. It could enhance it if we get it right with letting people engage more deeply with the content that they know and love.
Who's next?
Hi. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to crunch all this. And I was wondering if any of your companies are involved politically as to where the electricity is going to come from.
I don't think any of us are smart enough to figure that one out.
The answer I'll give, because I got yelled at by a bunch of high school kids actually about climate change, right? And it was when I was just early advising the company. And so I went back to the office, and so I made the engineers talk to me about the weight of what, music creation versus video creation is something like 30 or 100x the weight on these data centers than music. So I'm not like defending music. All I'm saying is there's a scale of all this stuff. Not all AI is created equal, for one. And then two, I worry too about the climate. I also worry that, and hope as an optimist in the world, not just as a person that works at Suno. I hope that AI is going to be one of the ways we're all going to figure out how to solve some of these problems. Maybe that's a little too Pollyanna, but I think it's a very real wish in the world, because I don't think any of it's going away. And so then all we have to do is figure out, we have to start leaning in and working on the problem, which I don't think enough people are talking about. Also, I'm drinking out of a plastic water bottle here, which is infinitely worse for the environment than all the data centers driving AI at the moment.
True. Yeah, and just quickly, on the workflow side of things, well, I know a lot of companies are into this, but us specifically is to get the processing out of the cloud, to try to make these models more efficient, right, as computers get a little bit more powerful, so eventually they can run on device. We're hamstrung offering people subscriptions because we have to run these models in GPU clusters that cost us money, right? Ultimately, that's not how people are used to making music. Ultimately, we want to get it out of there and put it on device, which will help a little bit.
Next.
Hi. Mine's a two-part question, but first I want to say to everyone, thank you. This is really great. Thank you for coming here. It's a great panel. I'm a songwriter with a band called ZX3, and the first part of the question is, I have a buddy that worked for Atlantic Records for 26 years, and he comes down from Boston and he helps me mix my music. We spend a lot of time mixing the music. As you know, you said it's a process, Dan. So would Suno or some of the AI programs, applications, get into the mixing part of it, give different mixes? We spend days doing it, days.
So this is interesting. So LANDR actually started as an AI mixing company like about 13 years ago, right? In a partnership with Allen and Heath to mix live concerts through their consoles. And it was just an incredibly difficult problem, right? Because there's so many variables, as you know, in a mix. It's crazy. LANDR pivoted to mastering around the time that I joined the company. I thought that automated mixing would have been a solved problem by this point, right? Or at least to give you a baseline of a mix. We're not talking about like doing everything for you.
Right.
There really hasn't been, I get the DAW manufacturers are constantly pinging me like, is there some new tech that we can license from you because we want this inside of our software? And there really hasn't been something that works all that well. And I actually just had a meeting with one of the CEOs of one of the major DAW companies, and the reason is there's plugins that you can use for mixing, like automated mixing, but they're not able to access the proper data inside the DAW, right? They don't communicate the way they would need to for an automated mix to work. So it's still, I think in the next 5 years we'll have something, and it'll need to be built inside DAWs. It can't be something that we just kind of tack on because it just doesn't work that way. But yeah, anyway, it's an interesting problem that hasn't been surprisingly addressed.
Okay, so, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, mixing is an art form. So, if you don't like drinking beer, whatever you like to drink, and hang out with your buddy for 3 or 4 days to mix a song, I mean, that's sort of the analog fun time. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I was going to say is, believe it or not, my IP attorney sent me to this seminar. And what I want to know is, if I use Suno to generate different versions of my songs, should I copyright those different versions? It's almost like when you had a website, you wanted to copyright the different domains so nobody could take them.
That's a good question.
We're all chuckling because we were talking about this
that.
upstairs. I mean, the answer is, if your IP attorney can copyright it, you certainly should copyright it. So we don't take any ownership of anything you make on our platform, right? So it's yours to copyright. The copyright system in the United States currently is at best very gray and opaque about what's copyrightable. The rule is, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically it must be like human forward or something.
Yeah,
what are the words?
It has to be, you can't copyright anything that isn't created by a human being. So AI itself is uncopyrightable. I think there's still an open question. I don't think prompting is human creation. I think prompting is great and is here to stay, but I don't think that's enough to be copyrighted. I think that the challenge is that since other people's work is being used for the training, that you may have an issue and you could expose yourself to. The music industry, I think, learned a long time ago that suing the creator, like they did with Napster, was a huge mistake. We now sue the pipes, not the creator, which is the right thing to do. But could someone go after and say, hey, my work was used in the training of this thing that you copyrighted? Yeah, they could.
Yeah, and just real quickly, something we didn't really touch on, the most prolific use of AI, we're talking about like music that you're gonna release, right, to a DSP or something like that. The most prolific use I have seen amongst professionals is amongst songwriters, right? And they're not releasing any music, right? But they're iterating very quickly and in different genres and experimenting with their songs that ultimately they record in the way that traditional way they always would, right? And you have pretty major artists like Teddy Swims, who's a very traditional type artist, coming out and saying, I use AI for every song that I do because it lets me kind of explore new directions. I like the Childish Gambino Donald Glover quote, I think is great, where he says, it allows you to make mistakes more quickly, right? And experiment, which I think is cool.
Thank you.
How you doing? Thank you guys for a great conversation. My wife said, be nice to the Suno guy. So I could be put into the hate category, but you're actually, I didn't want to like you, man, but I like you. The Incantio guy, you're my guy. My name's Eric. I run a small record label for the last 10 years. I have a background in ad tech and media and process. And I think what's the big challenge on what is slop and what isn't slop, and where the fine line is to publish something that then goes to the streaming services that then takes away from the artists and takes away from the studio people. Is there a musician's level, C-suite level that can basically say, I'm gonna be the guy that puts together a team that makes these decisions? And then suddenly, and then that works with technology too. You can have at the bottom the metadata that goes into whatever it is that goes into your system to allow the tracking that then gets us, some payouts at the end. At the end of the day, my friends and I like to joke, our royalties are just getting us some sandwiches. So it's not really, we're not expecting to get rich off of this. But I think in terms of integrity, can we create a C-suite top musician integrity person that then, filters through what the tech guys want to do, So
I think that's a great idea. Sat around and had beers and kicked around ideas like that as the industry goes, not as Suno goes, right?
Yeah.
At the moment, quite frankly, nobody wants us in that table, which is both a chicken and egg problem, right?
Right.
Because they're being sued, they're like, we don't want you at the party. On the other hand, currently, for this moment, we're the biggest of the companies in this space. And so I think that's a fantastic idea. I think we all take a lot of responsibility for trying to guide this thing to a much better place. And I actually love your little description of, not little, but your description of what you just said about not taking away, not being duplicative. Like, that's a great way to think of slop. Right? Like, the song that I described isn't slop because it doesn't take away from somebody else's song, even though I made it on Suno entirely prompted. But when it ends up in a place that takes away from some other great song, and I didn't intend it to be for somebody else, maybe that's a place that it doesn't belong.
Yeah, I mean, you could make the argument that you should have a filter that says don't publish, and however that works.
Yeah.
Really, at the end of the day, because it does take away.
That's the walled garden versus open studios conundrum.
Back to the walled garden. Yeah, all right, well, thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you.
I have one more, right? This is the last one.
I'm the last one. Good morning. My name is Preeti. I am the founder of AI Quantum Labs. Our entire reason for being is to be a part of this conversation, so I'm so grateful to be here. We want to be part of the category definition team that figures out what AI music actually is and not produce slop. So I have a recording artist. Her name is Kenzie Skye. She's tall, she's blonde, she's British, she's just like me. And she has a soul because we have a soul and we're giving her one. But I will say that there are some challenges in these tools. And one of the ones that we keep running into is that vocal melody generation, while it's genuinely impressive, purely instrumental top-line hooks still feel really generic. And I think maybe this might be a question for Daniel. Is this a data problem? Is this a structural problem? And is there something about a great instrumental top line that AI just fundamentally isn't ready for yet?
That's maybe more of a Paul solution because we don't do too much of that. But, well, I mean, I think, look at where we are, right? Three years ago, Will Smith was eating spaghetti badly in video, right? Like so it's shocking to me that we're already to the point that we're at across any AI's contribution to any form of media. So I agree with you, by the way, and some of the tools I've used, right? That's tricky, but I think I don't think it's a data problem. I think it's a model problem, right? And I think it's something that'll be solved relatively soon, right? Because a year ago, like, look at how much different even something like Suno is now from a year ago. I can't even imagine what it's going to be in 12 months.
So we added a new feature this week, not a plug for my product. We added a new feature this week. It was the most requested feature on the platform, which was like, how do I make the song sound like me? And so people were finding all kinds of ways to hack the system. But so now you can go on, you can sing a song, it'll turn that into your voice, right? You can make lots of different voices based on genre or whatever you want. There's protections around it. It generates a random set of words. I didn't have to read the words, so that makes sure that my voice is my voice. So I can't just like play a song and be Billy Joel from Green Day or whatever. That's one version of that. Honestly, it's brand new, and it's like hit or miss on how good it is. I think, and then one of the most things that people do on our platform is like, you can go in and you can replace the voice. So people go in, they stem it out, they remove the Suno vocal, they add in their own vocal, and that's the vocal they bring to the world. There's lots of ways, and again, we're at day 0 of all of this stuff. But also a year ago, I could have picked out a Suno song in any day of any world, and now, you know, for better or for worse, sometimes I'm like, I'm not entirely sure. And so as a music fan, I don't know how I feel about that. It's complicated, but as someone that like respects that the world moves forward, I think that's like fascinating and amazing. And if we all use it, we won't all use it for good. If the right version of us all use it for good, then the world will be a better place. And if people do crappy things with it, then like we're all gonna live in the dark internet.
I think we're going to wrap, but
That was
Not how they wanted.
wow.
right?
People will.
I want to mention that before we close, that the Suno is hosting workshops this afternoon, starting at 12, and you can walk into one of those workshops. Where do you sign? I don't know where you sign up.
You would sign up online.
Okay.
If you haven't already signed up online, I know a lot of the workshops are already filled, so you will have to check in at the door, and then they'll let you know if there's space. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I want to
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah,
everyone.
thank you.
Thank the panelists for some of them have come from long distance to be here. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And for everybody who's sticking around, just give us a few minutes to change over the stage, and we'll be right back.
Yeah. 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 This isn't just to show you, see. Yeah. It's a space to become who you'll be. If you got something to say, this stage is yours today. Lace, come on! Lights come up at the Westport Library. Yeah. Quiet turns electric, something legendary. From the stacks to the stage, feel the rush begin. A festival of voices, let the night break in. Where stories lived in black and white, now they're jumping off the page tonight. It's the Westport Library, VersoFest. Turn the silence into something big. Every voice, every sound, feel the whole place. Shake the ground from the first word spoken to the last guitar riff. This is what creation is. Hands up high, feel it in your chest. It's the Westport Library, VersoFest. Yeah. Yeah. Poets, bands, and fuel rapists, dreamers, writers, rule breakers. Every mic holds a spark, lighting up the dark. Hey! Different stories, different names. One community, one flame. It's the Westport Library, VersoFest, where ideas come alive like this. From a whisper to a scream, this is more than a scene. Sing it back, don't second guess. You belong at VersoFest. Tonight we're louder, nothing less at the Westport Library, VersoFest. This isn't just to show you see. It's a space to become who you'll be. If you